His regiment fell back in the assault, repulsed. This soldier continued to advance and planted the flag on the parapet, where he was captured by the enemy. Although struck several times in the face by splinters and with his gun disabled when a shell burst between the two forward 9-inch guns, killing and wounding 15 men, Fitzpatrick, within a few minutes, had the gun in working order again, while acting as orderly, voluntarily assisted to carry off the wounded from the ground in front of the crater while exposed to a heavy fight. These are just some of the actions that Canadian-born soldiers, sailors, and Marines were awarded the Medal of Honor for during the American Civil War. In fact, 30 Canadian-born individuals were awarded this medal during the war that tore the United States apart. In this video, we'll be covering some of these individuals and the actions that led to them being awarded the Medal of Honor. Many of the Medal of Honor citations are full of detail about what the individual did to be awarded the highest honor for bravery in the United States military, while other citations are not. For example, the citation describing what Carlos H. Rich, who was born in Quebec, did simply reads, "Saved the life of an officer." Rich served with Company K of the 4th Vermont Infantry and earned the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Battle of the Wilderness in Virginia on May 5, 1864. Another example covers Alonzo H. Pickle of Company B, 1st Minnesota Infantry, when he earned the Medal of Honor on August 14, 1864, at the Second Battle of Deep Bottom in Virginia. His citation reads, "At the risk of his own life, voluntarily went to the assistance of a wounded officer, laying close to the enemy lines, and under fire, carried him to a place of safety." Sergeant Thomas J. Higgins of Company D, 99th Illinois Infantry, earned his Medal of Honor at Vicksburg on May 22, 1863, before the city fell to Union forces. Higgins' citation reads, "When his regiment fell back in the assault, repulsed, this soldier continued to advance and placed the flag on the parapet, where he was captured by the enemy." Higgins died on August 15, 1917, and is buried in Hannibal, Missouri. There are more detailed citations, and we will look at those with a more in-depth look at the battles in which those medals were earned. The Battle of Chancellorsville is well known due to the actions of Confederate commander Robert E. Lee when he split up his troops to attack a much larger Union force. Fighting at Fredericksburg in Virginia on May 3, 1863, which was part of the larger battle at Chancellorsville, saw Union troops pushing the Confederates out of their defenses in the high ground at Marye's Heights, something Union troops had failed to do during the previous fighting there in December 1862. The Union troops pushed west of Fredericksburg and were attacked by Confederates near the Salem Church during the afternoon of May 3rd. The Union troops repulsed more Confederate attacks just west of Fredericksburg on the 4th, but still withdrew across the Rappahannock River the next day. Chancellorsville was a major defeat for the Union. John C. Gilmore of the 16th New York Infantry earned his Medal of Honor for his actions on May 3rd during the fighting at Salem Church. Seized the colors of his regiment and gallantly rallied his men under a very severe fire. Gilmore stayed in the U.S. Army after the war and reached the rank of Brigadier General. He died on December 22, 1922. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. John P. McPherson, born in Toronto, of Company D, 49th New York Infantry, earned the Medal of Honor for his actions on May 4, 1863, at Fredericksburg Heights. The 49th New York fought in John Sedgwick's 6th Corps, which was holding positions near Banks and Scott's Ford on the Rappahannock. McPherson's citation reads, "Corporal McPherson shot a Confederate color bearer and seized the flag. Also approached alone a barn between the lines and demanded and received the surrender of a number of enemy therein." McPherson died on May 10, 1864, after being mortally wounded during the Battle of the Wilderness. As a result, his Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously. He is buried in Buffalo, New York. At Banks Ford, Robert J. Coffey, born in St. John in today's New Brunswick, of Company K of the 4th Vermont Infantry, single-handedly captured 2 officers and 5 privates of the 8th Louisiana Regiment. Coffey died on July 9, 1901, and is buried in Montpelier, Vermont. On March 5, 1864, during the Battle of Yazoo City, Mississippi, which is located northeast of Vicksburg, Seaman James Stoddard from Port Robertson in what is today Ontario earned the Medal of Honor. Embarking from the Marmora with a 12-pounder howitzer mounted on a field carriage, Stoddard landed with the gun and crew in the midst of a heated battle, and bravely standing by his gun despite enemy rifle fire, which cut the gun carriage and rammer, contributed to the turning back of the enemy during the fierce engagement. Brigadier General Robert V. Richardson of the Confederate Army recorded the effects this gunfire had on his troops. 2 gunboats now opened their batteries upon us in the city and rained down showers of balls from exploding shrapnels. Union troops holding a redoubt outside the city forced a Confederate retreat from Yazoo City. Details about Stoddard's life after the battle are scarce. In 1944, the destroyer USS Stoddard was named in his honor. The areas in and around the Shenandoah Valley saw fighting many times during the American Civil War. The strategic valley sat on the flank of Virginia, which was the location of much of the fighting. It allowed troops to move north and south much easier than further east due to the lack of rivers barring movement of armies. The valley supplied wheat, corn, meat, and especially draft animals to the Confederate war effort, making it a vital area for them to hold. Summer of 1864, the valley was fought over again. Confederate General Jubal Early was commanded to take his 2nd Corps to the valley from the defenses at Petersburg to stop a Union attack reaching down the valley. The Valley Campaign of 1864 saw another Medal of Honor awarded to a Canadian-born soldier. Edward Dobbs received the Medal of Honor for his actions at Ashby's Gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains on July 19, 1864. This was during an attempt by Union cavalry to force a passage across the gap in the Shenandoah River to attack the rear of Jubal Early's corps, as well as his supply trains, as he repositioned himself near Berryville. While serving with Company C of the 21st New York Cavalry, Dobbs, at great personal risk, rescued his wounded captain and carried him from the field to a place of safety. He died on January 12, 1901, and is buried in Port Hope, Ontario. Several Canadian-born recipients of the Medal of Honor earned the medal during the Battle of Mobile Bay, from which the famous line, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," was said by Rear Admiral David Farragut. All of these Medals of Honor were earned during actions occurring on August 5, 1864. In fact, 97 Medals of Honor were awarded for actions during the Battle of Mobile Bay. Mobile was one of the last open Confederate ports, and Farragut was charged with capturing it and closing it to Confederate shipping. Mobile Bay had 2 main ship channels defended by 3 forts. The largest, Fort Morgan, 46-gun star-shaped fortification, protected the deepest channel from its eastern side. On the west side of the channel, Fort Gaines provided covering fire with 26 guns on Dauphin Island. Fritz blocked part of the main channel with torpedoes, floating barrels of explosives, much like today's naval mines, to supplement their defenses. The ironclad CSS Tennessee and 3 gunboats were also positioned inside the bay. The U.S. Navy vessels had to close with these forts to force their defenders to cease firing. Thomas Fitzpatrick served aboard USS Hartford, which was Farragut's flagship for the attack. During the fighting against the Tennessee and Fort Morgan, the citation reads, although struck several times in the face by splinters and with his gun disabled when a shell burst between the 2 forward 9-inch guns, killing and wounding 15 men, Fitzpatrick, within a few minutes, had the gun in working order again with new track, breeching, and side tackle, had sent the wounded below, cleared the area of other casualties, and was fighting his gun as before. He served as an inspiration to the members of his crew and contributed to the success of the action in which the Tennessee was captured. William Pelham, born in Halifax, also served on USS Hartford. His citation reads, when other members of his gun crew were killed or wounded under the enemy's terrific shell fire, Pelham calmly assisted the casualties below and voluntarily returned and took his place at an adjoining gun where another man had been struck down. He continued to fight his gun throughout the remainder of the battle, which resulted in the capture of the Tennessee. Pelham died on March 30th, 1933, and is buried in Brooklyn, New York. James McIntosh served on USS Richmond. His citation reads, despite damage to his ship and the loss of several men on board as enemy fire raked her decks, McIntosh performed his duty with skill and courage throughout the prolonged battle, which resulted in the surrender of the rebel ram Tennessee and in the successful attacks carried out on Fort Morgan. McIntosh died on May 28, 1908, and is buried in New Jersey. Three of the Canadian-born recipients earned the Medal of Honor for their actions during the Petersburg Campaign that brought the American Civil War to an end. It was an extended campaign that wore down Confederate forces south of Richmond, Virginia, involved trench warfare and a siege-like battle. On June 17, 1864, at Petersburg, Benjamin F. Young of the 1st Michigan Sharpshooters was awarded the Medal of Honor for his capture of a flag from the 35th North Carolina Infantry. Young died on January 14, 1927, and is buried in Los Angeles, California. July 30th, 1864, Robert Dodd of Company E, 27th Michigan Infantry, was present at the Battle of the Crater. His citation reads, "While acting as orderly, voluntarily assisted to carry off the wounded from the ground in front of the crater while exposed to heavy fire." Dodd died on September 4th, 1903, and is buried in Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. On March 31st, 1865, during the Battle of White Oak Road, Sergeant Albert O'Connor, who was born in East Hereford in today's Quebec, served Company A, 7th Wisconsin Infantry. As the Confederate position began to collapse at Petersburg, Union troops pursued them. This was the last offensive action by General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. While at Gravelly Run, Virginia, along with a comrade, Sergeant O'Connor captured a Union officer from a detachment of 9 Confederates, capturing 3 of the detachment and dispersing the remainder. On 1 April 1865, he seized a stand at Confederate colors, killing a Confederate officer in hand-to-hand contest over the colors and retaining the colors until surrounded by Confederates and compelled to relinquish them. He died on April 3, 1928, and is buried at the Washington Soldiers' Home Cemetery in Ording, Washington. This is just the stories of a few of the Canadian-born recipients of the Medal of Honor during the American Civil War. Many of these sailors, soldiers, and Marines made important contributions to the Union victory over the Confederacy. They made their important contributions at places like the Shenandoah Valley, Mobile Bay, Vicksburg, and Petersburg. Many of them signed up to fight in a war that was not of their nation. However, their displays of gallantry are worth remembering.